It all started on a crisp, rainy fall day. I entered into my homeroom class, late like usual. My professor, Dr. Creepy, as I called him, wasn't in the mood for my tardiness on this day. He cleared his throat, which caused a rumbling sound louder than thunder. He caught my attention, along with the attention of all my fellow classmates. "Mr. Roderick, why are you always late to my class?" he blurted out aloud. I whispered underneath my breath, "Because I can't stand you, asswipe." My words weren't as silent as I thought, causing my classmates to laugh loudly. But they weren't the only ones who heard my disrespectful comment. Dr. Creepy did as well. I looked over my shoulder, only to spot him folding his arms and staring deeply into my eyes with a look of rage drawn onto his face. "What did you say, young man?" he questioned me in an instant. I shrugged my shoulders and slickly responded, "If your hearing were any good, you would have heard me, Dr. Creepy." My words caused nothing but silence to echo throughout the entire classroom. Every student's attention jumped back and forth from me back over to Dr. Creepy every few seconds. "What did you just call me?" he questioned me. I chuckled because I knew the question was rhetorical. However, Dr. Creepy didn't find my words amusing, not even the slightest. "Dr. Creepy is what I called you," causing him to glare at me. "This must be some sort of joke to you," he replied swiftly. "I'm giving you 2 weeks detention, beginning today," he added. I'm up in arms. I can't believe it. My slick mouth has gotten me into trouble yet again, causing the smirk to vanish from off of my face. Dr. Charles, I have basketball practice later today, and I can't miss it," I made clear. He chuckled at my words, as though I was a comedian and I had just told a joke, but what I said wasn't funny. I'll speak with Coach Murphy and explain to him that Liberty's High's most valuable basketball player won't make it for today's practice because of his blatant disrespect towards me. Now go have a seat, and maybe, just maybe, I'll reconsider if you can show me you have respect for me. I wanted to respond swiftly with a smart comment. However, I bit my tongue. I decided to take a seat in the back of the classroom next to my friends Cody and Brian. "Bro, you can't miss today's practice," says Brian once I sat down next to him. I agreed. "Trust me, I won't," I said. I kept my mouth closed for the next half hour as I noticed Dr. Creepy gazing over at me constantly. One time I spotted him just watching me intensely while smiling from ear to ear like some sort of clown. His smile bothered me. It was almost as if he were poking fun at me. But I know no matter what, I'm going to get the last laugh. I finished up my work, Cody finished up my work for me, giving me enough time to relax and take a breather. My focus locked onto the clock just several feet above the head of Dr. Creepy. 4 minutes left until homeroom ends. Then 3, 2, now 1 minute to go. I may not wish amnesia on anyone. However, I'm hopeful Dr. Creepy has it and completely forgets about the fact that he had given me detention for today. He hasn't uttered a single word to me since our verbal spat earlier, and given he told me that he might change his mind about giving me detention, I'm hopeful that is the case. The school bell rang, and I stood up from my chair, hearing my heart race. I stood behind a group of students making their way towards the classroom exit. I followed them as I was in hot pursuit of exiting the classroom until I heard my name exiting from Dr. Creepy's mouth. I froze in my tracks as all of my fellow classmates exited from the classroom, including my best friends Cody and Brian. "Where do you think you're going?" asked Dr. Creepy, whose gigantic shoes began growing by the second. I turned to face him as the classroom doors suddenly slammed shut simultaneously. The loud back-to-back thuds grabbed my attention away from Dr. Creepy briefly as I heard footsteps rush over to me. I looked straight ahead, staring at yellow razor-sharp teeth and smelling a mouth that smelt worse than onions and garbage. I spotted a gigantic red nose hanging from off Dr. Creepy's face while a sinister smirk grazed his face. I froze in my position momentarily before I grew enough strength to begin backing away from him. Then suddenly, he started laughing like a clown, causing me to take a swing at his face with my closed fist. He dodged a would-be vicious blow like the Matrix. He laughed even louder as I began bawling out for help. I grabbed a hold of the door handle to exit the classroom, but the door wouldn't open up, no matter how hard I tugged on the door. I kicked and screamed even more for help as I felt a hand rest onto my shoulder. I turned to face Dr. Creepy, Mr. Clown, who continued giggling loudly. "It's too bad now you know my little dark secret," he said. "Since you know my secret, no longer can you live." My heart skipped 10 beats as Dr. Creepy's mouth opened widely to allow him to chow down on me like I was his lunch. And unfortunately for me, I was. Summer had just begun, and for my girlfriend Jessica and I, it only meant one thing. The Midtown Skate Park was open. It's the place we met just 3 years ago, and it's the place we come to visit annually to celebrate our anniversary and our love for skateboarding. The day started out with the sun shining down brightly as a light breeze French kissed the city, which only meant the perfect day to skate. Due to concerts, football games, and private parties, Skate Park Heartland is usually too occupied for us skateboarders to enjoy. However, come summertime, it becomes our time to take over the park and just enjoy every inch of the park. Jessica stood by my side as we entered into the already jam-packed park. I spotted a group of our friends with skateboards in hand, ready to have a good old time. Jessica's face glowed with excitement like it always does when we're here. Little time was wasted before she dropped her skateboard down to the floor and took off in a hurry. I struggled briefly to catch up to her, but eventually I did moments later. After a couple of minutes of doing a few tricks, enjoying several ramps, we caught up to our friends who stood in the middle of the park chilling. I dapped up all my friends as Jessica greeted her best friend Cynthia with a bear hug. They hadn't seen each other in a month, given that Cynthia spent the last few months out of the country. They immediately began talking about her trip as I began talking to my friends. "How's everything going, fellas?" I said, as they all didn't seem as enthusiastic as I clearly am at this moment. "Come on, guys. Skate Park Heartland is back open. Y'all should be just as excited as I am," I added. They struggled to smile. They could barely look me in the eyes as I attempted to figure out just what was wrong with them. "Yo, John, they're going to close down the park for good at 5 p.m. today," says Jason with a blank grin locked onto his face. I appeared puzzled. I tripped and fell over my own words as I attempted to construct a basic sentence. "Stop joking," I said, scoffing at his words. However, no one burst out laughing as I realized what Jason was telling me was accurate. Then suddenly, I could hear the sound of loud horns growing in the distance. A fat, chubby, bald man with furry arms began urging everyone to leave the park at once. This must be a terrible dream, I thought for a second. However, it's not. This rather large man hopped from off of the cab of the pickup truck down onto the floor near the entrance of the park. How he then caused the largest earthquake ever to take place at that very moment, I'll never understand. I shook my head as I'm being defiant as usual, as the crowd of my fellow skateboarders all stood their grounds, refusing to obey this gigantic man's order. He gradually entered into the park, running out of breath with every step he took, as his forehead rained down with sweat onto his face. I want everybody out of my park immediately, he shouted as several construction workers, all holding shovels, marched up alongside of him. I didn't know whether this was his way of threatening us or he wanted to tear down this park earlier than everyone was told. We're not going anywhere, my girlfriend Jessica shouted out loud, causing dozens of other skateboarders to agree with her. The beastly looking man laughed at her words as he ordered his construction crew to tear down every inch of this park. You annoying skateboarders need to grab your skateboards and exit the park immediately, he made clear. Or else what? Someone shouted off in the distance. The giant bowling ball-sized looking man with hairy arms roared in anger. Or else you'll all regret not obeying my orders, he spoke angrily. Jessica marched her way over to him as I immediately followed her, and so did our friends. We're not going anywhere, Jessica stated. She's a very passionate person when it comes to her and her beliefs, and she truly loves and believes in this park. Skateboarding was her way to mentally escape from the harsh realities of which she's faced over the years. This is more than a skate park to her. This is her therapy, just like so many others. So tearing this park down is just something that won't ever happen. The fat slob of a man with ketchup stains staining his shirt just ordered his men to demolish the place. Destroy everything and everyone in here, he shouted aloud before a cop siren sounded off, preventing his men with shovels from continuing to head over in our direction as we all grabbed a hold of our skateboards to battle his men. Sure, they may be stronger and more intimidating than us. However, we outnumber them all 4-1. We're not backing down to them, and neither are they backing down to us. It's as though us skateboarders are in an army, and we were already anticipating the war because we're all together united as one. The large man laughed loudly, finding amusement in our mere presence. He could see the seriousness on all of our faces. If he had any sense, he would back down and take his crew with him. But clearly, common sense seems to be what he's lacking, and that's going to cause him great bodily harm. I took a glimpse at my girlfriend Jessica. She's boiling with rage, and if she's unhappy, so am I. We're getting closer to the construction workers with shovels in their hands. They don't seem to mind battling us as they grab firmer grips on their shovels with evil scowls painted on their faces. Second after second is leading us to getting closer and closer to them. Blood was shed, and this will fall down on the hands of the grotesque man. Now, no more than a few feet separate us from them as I watch the sinister grin make its way onto that man's face. Then suddenly, the police sirens grew louder and rapidly increased in volume as police vehicles became visible all around the skateboard park. I felt relief. I could breathe again. I knew we stood no chance against these prison-looking construction workers. Finally, a voice of reason has arrived, and I know they'll put this gargantuan man in his place. Officer, we need your help, Jessica shouted aloud in angst as all of the other skateboarders agreed. Officer Smith exited from his vehicle with his belly hanging over his waist. He hushed the crowd of skateboarders almost immediately once he exited from out of his vehicle. Several other officers arrived following his lead. Jessica, filled with anxiety, took several steps in his direction, causing him to raise his hand up like a stop sign. "Now you wait right there, Missy," he shouted aloud as he walked up to the fat slob of a man. "Mr. Wilmot, how are you doing this lovely day?" says Officer Smith to that fat bastard. Mr. Wilmot forced a smile onto his face as he responded, "Not so good, thanks to these little miscreants trying to prevent my men from tearing down this park." Officer Smith shook his head. "Sir, that's a problem," he replied, causing us to agree with his words. "That's a problem you shouldn't ever face." Our smiles vanished with those words flowing from out of Officer Smith's mouth. We're all dumbfounded. The friendliest cop in the city who always sides with us just isn't at this time. Officer Smith and Mr. Wilmot spoke briefly, whispering to one another. And then suddenly, Officer Smith ordered us to leave the park at once or get arrested, baffling us all. Several other officers threatened to mace us if we didn't comply to the order, which we were all forced to leave the park within minutes, as Mr. Wilmot's men wasted no time before they all began demolishing the skateboard park. Jessica was livid, and believe me, I heard about it during the entire drive until I dropped her home. She spoke about not only getting revenge on Mr. Wilmot, but also Officer Smith as well. I didn't try to calm her down, I just let her vent for nearly a half hour until I dropped her off. She's no criminal. She's not a heartless person. So I know all the things she said she was going to do to them, she would never do. I made it home about 20 minutes after I dropped her home, and I didn't bother to eat a thing. I just headed upstairs to my bedroom, and then I threw myself on my bed as I fell asleep in a hurry. I don't even want to think about this day. Hours must have traveled by before my bedroom light turned on, startling me, causing me to spring up out of my bed as I spotted Jessica sitting on my computer chair just across from my bed with blood stains on her hands. My jaw dropped, my heart raced, and my head began spinning as I attempted to wake myself up from what I hoped was a bad dream, but it wasn't. "Jessica, what happened? Are you all right?" I asked with great concern as I noticed blood stains covering her shirt and neck as well. Tears drizzled from her eyes as she began rocking back and forth in her chair. "Jessica, talk to me," I said concernedly. She began shaking her head as more tears dangled from out of her eyes. "Remember you told me that no matter what, you'll always love me, no matter what," she spoke. I nodded my head gradually, but with fright. "Jessica, what happened to you?" I asked, knowing that more than likely she must have done something terribly wrong. "The skateboard park isn't going to be closed anymore," she said softly. I appeared puzzled by her words. "What does that mean?" I asked. "I need to get to the bottom of all of this." "Why are you covered in blood?" I continued. She examined herself momentarily before returning her focus back onto me. "You told me that no matter what happens, you'll always love me, and you'll do anything for me. Remember that, John?" she stated. "So I need you to take this from me and tell the cops that it was you who killed Mr. Wilmot, and it was you who killed Officer Smith." Her words sent chills up my spine and panic through my entire body as I froze like a statue. I watched as she stood up, wiping off the fingerprints from the gun as she walked over to me and placed it right into my hands. "I called the cops already," she added. "I told them how enraged you were to hear the news about the skateboard park and how you vowed to get your revenge. I told the 911 operator that I can't believe you killed them. I told the operator that you even threatened to kill me she says calmly. The sound of police sirens sounded as I instantly heard officers bang down my front door and rushed into my home with their guns drawn. I can't believe you did this to me, I said as I'm still trying to make sense of this whole situation. I heard the sounds of officers yelling, "Put the gun down," as Jessica screamed, "John, please don't shoot me." Perhaps it was her words, or maybe the fact that a gun rested in my hands, which caused every officer that rushed into my room to unload their guns at me. I don't remember what year it was, what year I do. I just do my best to forget about it, given that it was the year, and in that year, it was the day my life nearly came to an end. It was the night before Halloween, and my friends and I thought it would be a good idea to spend the night over at an abandoned house to bring in Halloween. Yeah, I know what you're thinking, and so am I now that I look back at it. What the hell were we thinking? The sun faded from the heavens as thunder roared through the city, what seemed like every other minute. My friends Jordan, Richie, Veronica, and Tracy all showed up dressed in their Halloween costumes. I don't specifically remember what everyone else had on besides Veronica, who dressed up in a leather-tight outfit like a Catwoman, and I was Batman. Yeah, I know, cheesy, right? But that was my favorite character growing up as a kid. And plus I went shopping for a costume last minute, so I didn't have many options. Anyways, getting back to the story, I drove in my car with Veronica and Jordan while everyone else drove in Tracy's car. We arrived just outside the abandoned two-story house, which was darker than a street with no street lights around midnight. The scent of weed filled not only my vehicle but my lungs as well as we puffed past the joint around clockwise to one another. We all exited from the vehicles after we pulled into the driveway. The sound of crickets sounded off heavily all around us, as a few of us pulled out our flashlights just to see exactly what was going on around us. "Hey Jordan, how about you go inside first?" I joked as I aimed my flashlight right at Jordan, causing him to shield his face. He shook his head. He's by far the scariest one of all of us, as he attempted for days now, since we came up with this brilliant idea to spend the night here, trying to talk us out from doing so. Why did he even show up? I tried to figure that out until I spotted him gawking at Tracy from the very moment we all got out of the car. He's obsessed with her, and honestly, I don't blame him because Tracy does look good, just not as good as Veronica does. "What are we all standing here waiting for?" asked Richie. "What are you all, scared of something? Let's go." He grabbed a bottle of alcohol and nearly suffocated himself with it as he poured every ounce of liquor down his throat. He then tossed the bottle aside and shouted out, "Woo!" in excitement before he kicked open the door and marched right into the abandoned house. He was greeted by a large spider web that stuck to his face like glue, but that didn't spoil his excitement about being here. He pulled out his phone from his back pocket and he began blasting music loudly. We all entered into the dark, creepy house soon after as we took a look around the home. Instantly, I spotted the portrait of a family standing on the wall in the center of the living room. Everyone else took a look around the home while I gingerly walked over to the picture, examining it closely. I got within a few feet of the picture as I spotted the eyes of the woman who must be the mother staring right at me. She then took her eyes off of me and looked over at my friends before she looked right back at me, frightening me instantly. Guys, look. She's looking at me, I blurted out aloud, causing everyone to take a look over at me. Everyone thought that I must have seen someone, however they spotted me staring up at the picture on the wall and they all began laughing out loud. Bro, I told you don't smoke any weed, says Jordan, the good guy out of all of us. I shook my head. I know that I'm high, but there's no way my mind's playing tricks on me. I spotted Veronica staring at me intensely, not uttering a single word. I wonder what she's thinking as she looks at me. Does she think that I'm making this up, or does she believe me? I just don't know because she's just gawking at me. Then her focus went away from me as she started to make her way up the stairs. Hey guys, I called dibs on the master bedroom, she says before she sprinted up the stairs as Richie rushed behind her. No way, that's not fair, he yelled, as he couldn't even keep up with her. I shook my head as I noticed Jordan following Tracy around the house like her little puppy. I then returned my focus onto the picture where I no longer saw the woman in the picture. She went missing from the picture, causing me to back away from it. I nearly tripped over a rusted stool, which forced me to take a look around just to make sure that I didn't trip over anything else. Somehow I took a look back over at the picture, and there that same woman was. She had returned to the picture. I shook my head. I'm terrified, I must admit. That caused me to sprint up the flight of stairs in a hurry as I yelled out Veronica's name. Flashlight in hand, guided me up the stairs where I spotted Veronica standing in the doorway, waving to me for me to come join her. I had suddenly completely forgotten what had just took place downstairs. As a matter of fact, I was going to tell her that we need to leave immediately, but my mind went completely away from that. I met Veronica by the doorway of the master bedroom where our lips met in a hurry. Oh man, high school has gone wild, blurted out Richie, who held up his phone as though he was recording us. Get out of here, Veronica shouted, causing Richie to back away. Whatever, guys, he spoke. I'm going to go and get those 2 bottles of hen dogs I left in the car. He took off, rushing down the stairs as Jordan and Tracy came up the stairs, holding each other's hands. I looked at Jordan, and he looked at me as we both rooted each other on without even uttering one word to one another. He then entered a room with Tracy, and I entered another with Veronica, and needless to say, Veronica and I had a good time. Nearly a few hours later, as I rested in bed laid up next to Veronica, I heard the sound of footsteps. I heard them go back and forth just outside of our bedroom door, before a bedroom door slammed closed. Then it reopened again. I heard footsteps running back and forth before my room door yet again. Then quietness took place for several seconds before someone began banging on my room door, waking Veronica up from out of her sleep. Her Catwoman outfit covered half of her face, but I could see the terror in her eyes. What was that, she asked. I shrugged my shoulders. However, I know that I have to man up and go find out. I stood up from the bedside in nothing but my boxers with a flashlight in hand, aimed at the door. I can see someone's foot through the bottom of the door. That's Richie. It has to be, says Veronica, suddenly gaining some courage. Tell him to grow up and take his ass to sleep. I agreed. I grabbed the door handle, filled with anger. I know Richie must be mad that his girlfriend didn't show up, and he's all alone. I opened the door and I spotted no one standing in front of the door. Just Richie's shoes resting on the floor. I appeared puzzled. I'm confused. Richie, this isn't funny, I yelled, causing Tracy and Jordan to exit from their bedroom. What's going on, bro? Jordan asked in a concerned manner. I shook my head. I think Richie's playing mind games with us, I said as I heard a loud thud come from Richie's bedroom. That caused Jordan and I to head over to his room door as Veronica exited from out of our room. She headed over to Tracy, standing by her side as I exhaled deeply as I placed my hand onto Richie's door handle. "Richie, I'm coming in. You need to stop playing around," I spoke before I shoved the bedroom door wide open. I spotted Richie laid out on his bed, smothered in his own blood, causing Jordan to take off running as I stood there frozen. "He's dead. Richie's dead," yelled Jordan over and over again as Tracy cried out while hearing the news. Then suddenly silence filled the entire house as I heard a loud thud after a loud thud. My heart raced. Panic filled my entire body. "Guys, what's going on?" I said aloud as I crept out of the room gradually. I then spotted Veronica holding a knife that she just yanked out of Tracy's gut, causing Tracy to drop down dead to the floor. My eyes widened. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. "Veronica, what the hell did you just do?" I asked, frightenedly. Veronica didn't respond as she began observing me from the distance. Suddenly, she began removing the mask from off of her face. "3 years ago, Pat, before you arrived here, Richie, Jordan, and Tracy thought it would be fun to play with fireworks, launching a few into this house, causing a huge fire that killed my family. My mother, my father, my brother, and my baby sister," she explained, as their souls arrived, appearing right before me by Veronica's side. "They had to pay for what they did," she added. "I'll let you go, Pat, but you must promise to never speak of this ever, and I mean never, or else we'll come for you," she made clear. And until this day and beyond, this story will remain my secret.